The essence of gaslighting is to put maximum doubt in you. When you doubt, you lose yourself as a person and stop trusting yourself and your thoughts. This is what makes you a person who will trust the gaslighter and give him full control over your thoughts. The essence of triangulation is that when two people are arguing, and a third person, who is most often a contracted person of one of the disputants, intervenes in the conversation to influence who in the dispute will be right. Also, triangulation sometimes affects the dependence of one disputant on the second disputant who uses triangulation. The essence of projection is a protective effect. The manipulator imposes his own desire, thoughts, or feelings on another person by attributing them to the victim. This is done in order to avoid what the manipulator himself feels or wants. The essence of controlling your life is that the manipulator wants to have control over your day-to-day autonomy. They need you to be unable to function and make decisions without them. This may include controlling access to your money, preventing you from furthering your education, or even limiting who you can and cannot spend time with. The essence of name-calling is to make the victim feel inferior. The manipulator starts using insults in mild forms, and as the victim becomes accustomed to this attitude, the manipulator increases the intensity. The goal of this technique is to make the victim feel that she does not deserve to be treated better. The point of generalization is to apply the victim's traits to a group of people, e.g., all men don't take a hint. This encourages the victim to act or present themselves in a way that the manipulator finds pleasing or easy to control. The essence of moving the goalposts is that the manipulator changes the rules of a situation halfway through that prevents the victim from succeeding. This can look like providing additional conditions necessary for success or highlighting disqualifying elements of your success. The essence of love bombing is that the manipulator devotes all of his or her time and energy to the victim, also showing intense love and concern. The manipulator uses love bombardment to quickly build intimacy, trust, and increase the victim's loyalty. The essence of changing the subject is that the manipulator changes the subject when the victim makes a valid point or receives a compliment from another person. The manipulator does this to make the victim feel devalued. The essence of the insecurity game is that the manipulator does everything to make you feel shame. Shame is a negative emotion, and most people try to avoid it, which is what makes you obey the manipulator in order not to feel it anymore. In other words, the manipulator pressed on your childhood wound, or rather that one of your parents was selfish, and when the manipulator called you selfish, it caused a lot of negative emotions, which makes you want to not be selfish in the eyes of the manipulator and thus do what he wanted to do by starting this manipulation on you. The essence of the silent treatment is that the manipulator emotionally and verbally closes himself off from the victim. That is, the refusal of any form of communication and intimacy. The essence of passive-aggressiveness is that the manipulator does not speak or point out something directly, but instead uses sarcasm, pouting, or insincere compliments. This keeps the victim from relaxing and forces them into a constant state of monitoring, guessing, and trying to adjust to the manipulator's moods and reactions. As a result, it keeps the focus on the manipulator, and the victim does not have the energy and time to evaluate his or her own feelings. The essence of being dismissive or diminishing is that when the victim makes a meaningful contribution to group discussions or succeeds, the manipulator is dismissive in order to continue to maintain control. Most often this appears as an explanation of why the success was not earned honestly. The essence of treating you like a child is that the manipulator infantilizes the victim. It is also a form of gaslighting, which is aimed at making the victim less trusting of himself or herself and unable to cope with basic responsibility. This can take the form of talking down to the person as if they are less intelligent, interfering, and taking responsibility for a task they are capable of doing on their own, or physically treating them as if they are incapable of performing certain tasks. The essence of blaming the victim for the abuse is that the manipulator silences the victim of the emotional abuse by convincing the victim that they have provoked the emotional manipulation themselves. This causes the victim to constantly question her actions to try to avoid negative interactions with the manipulator. The essence of using guilt trips is that the manipulator makes you feel guilty in order to get you not to do something. For example, if you go out with your friends today, I will be very lonely and sad. The manipulator's long-term goal is to convince you not to do it again in the future without discussing it with him or her. The essence of using threats or coercion is that the manipulator threatens to leave you, to take something important away from you, or to harm himself if you do not do what he wants. It is always important to treat threats of self-harm and seek professional help,